The following program is to provide entertainment and information. It is not considered to be any legal or investment advice. Good morning, appraisers. Let's talk some real estate. You're listening to the Voice of Appraisal, the #1 appraisal podcast in all of America that always brings you the latest news and information from the front lines of the real estate market, anything from market conditions, appraisal regulations, cryptocurrencies, big bank news. If you have a question, we have all of your answers. We are the one-stop source for all of your real estate appraisal information needs. If you want to be in the know, you have definitely tuned in to the right show. I'm your host, Phil Crawford. Happy to have all of you here with us. Explosive show yesterday, Kevin. Explosive show. That was part one.
Right.
This is part two. We're going to continue on with Jonathan Miller in our conversation on the 5th anniversary, Kevin, the 5th anniversary of Appraiser Fest, the best appraiser conference ever in the history of the earth. Ladies and gentlemen, here is our continued conversation with the one and only Jonathan Miller. By the way, this whole thing with this whole tipping program, really quick, and this was from the other show. Listen to it. It's the one from NOV1. Here to commemorate the 5th anniversary of Appraiser Fest 2018, NOV 123 2018. But remember, Bob Murphy is still out there.
Yeah.
Bob Murphy is still active. He's still active on LinkedIn. He's a smart resource to go to. And I think that if you're with Fannie Mae right now, someone needs to call up Bob Murphy and be like, listen, here's the bottom line. How do we handle this? Because I'll tell you right now, Bob Murphy does not tip.
You don't tip.
He doesn't tip.
What do you mean you don't tip?
Bob Murphy is not a tipper.
You don't tip.
Can you imagine?
What do you mean you don't tip?
Can you imagine being in a Fannie Mae boardroom right now and saying, hey, listen, I want to go with what Bob Murphy has to say? He said, I'm not going to tip.
You don't tip.
That's like a Fannie Mae boardroom right there.
Tip.
Let's go ahead and pull up the Appraiser Quality Monitoring Service Monday morning meeting with Bob Murphy.
You don't tip.
You don't tip. You're not going to send a tip.
You don't tip.
It's ridiculous, Jonathan. It's absolutely ridiculous. I think what needs to happen is if Fannie Mae has an issue with quality from an appraiser, handle it like the HUD handled it about 5 years ago, where they did an internal audit and they sent letters out to appraisers asking them to change certain things, and they used it as a teachable moment. You cannot use government as a teachable moment because government is nothing more than force. It's like giving a hug to Edward Scissorhands. You're going to get stabbed. You can't do it that way. That's the way it needs to go. So that's my point. I say somebody call up Bob Murphy. What do you think about that, Jonathan?
I'm still stuck on the Edward Scissorhands reference, but I get your point. I take your tip.
Okay, there you go. There you go. And now let's talk about something sharp. Let's talk about something that's razor sharp right now, like Edward Scissorhands, and that is this class action lawsuit that National Association of Realtors is going through.
Yeah.
The NAR is having a really hard time with their optics right now. And your friend, Barry Ritholtz, who you've been friends with for a very long time, just came out recently blasting the National Association of Realtors.
He really did.
He did.
Yeah, he's got a show on Bloomberg Radio called Masters in Business, and he's one of the smartest people I know. And he, the whole thing with NAR covering up the sexual harassment by the president,
right?
The massive compensation by the CEO, the whole sort of cesspool of the cloak and dagger politics at the top of the food chain, on top of several class action lawsuits. Which all that bad behavior kind of takes the eye off the ball for the organization. And he was basically saying, why didn't this happen 20 years ago? And I think the reason why it's an important reference, the idea is who's very critical of NAR and what their actual value was.
Right.
And this is the question I had for any trade organization that's on autopilot or a monopoly. They don't provide benefits to the membership, a value add. Here we are in a profession about valuation. If they don't provide value, then they shouldn't exist. And, so the question is, what value does NAR actually provide? The litigation is this idea that when a seller, and it's several class actions, there might even be a third one. I mean, there's a bunch of litigation going on right now about this.
The one that's being heard last week was the one considered to be it's called Sitzer-Burnett. That's the case. The Sitzer-Burnett case that was heard last week.
Yeah, and the idea is that, when you are a seller of a home and you're listing, you actually, through the commission, pay not just the listing agent, but you pay, it's a split situation between the listing agent and the buyer's agent. And this class action is about not having to pay the commission for the buyer's agent.
Not having the seller pay the commission to the buyer's agent. That's what
yes, I'm sorry. Yes. And so that's what this is all about. And so there's a lot of, hoopla about this. On top of all this bad behavior, it's a really sort of dark time for a trade group that has 1.6 million members. And I know that some of the, smaller trade groups that are semi-affiliated with NAR are looking to leave.
Well, Redfin did leave it.
Because not even Redfin. I mean, just, I can't name names, but, just organizations that are aligned with them. What ended up happening is in settlement talks, RE/MAX, Anywhere, which used to be Reology, and Redfin was the first. Again, my example of there's a tech sector sort of company like leading the charge.
Taking a stand. Yeah, exactly.
Right, taking a stand. And so, that accounts for a gigantic slice of the agents nationwide that are no longer going to be required to have a membership in NAR.
Right.
And this is going to be devastating to the financial solvency of this organization, which used to be known as a group that could get stuff done in Washington. And as it turned out, I've been told by a couple of people that are very tight with NAR, they had somebody in their sort of lobbying group that had been there for decades that was incredibly effective, and when he retired, they are not the same. That was what they were really known for.
Well, and it's sad because, like you said, RE/MAX had to pay out $55 billion in settlement just to get out of it. I think at the end of the day, honestly, the people
I think it was million.
Was it million? I apologize, not billion. Million. Yeah, sorry. I've been listening to the government too much.
I know you think big, Phil.
I know.
You think big, Phil.
I've listened to the government too much. The numbers are getting too big. But no, $55 million in a cash position.
And Anywhere paid like 80-something million, I think.
Yeah, those are huge hits. And the other thing, they're all leaving the National Association of Realtors. And the bottom line is this. They're targeting the National Association of Realtors. Yes, there are brokerages, there are companies that are all involved in these lawsuits. At the end of the day, it's the NAR that I think the attorneys are going for. It's the NAR.
Yes.
It's the bankrupting of that organization, selling the building in Chicago, get it on the market right now, get it out of here because this organization is done. When you talk about Barry saying, why didn't this happen 20 years ago? I think, honestly, it's been in the works for 40 years, ever since the Foley case, going back in the day. And I think that's where this is starting to culminate. It's not a matter of the brokers. And the brokers want to leave the National Association of Realtors because they're worried about copycat lawsuits. So if there's
lawsuits,
I mean, there's so many copycats that can come from this and so many different angles that I think that the brokers are just hesitant about it.
It's super interesting because NAR doesn't really exist in Manhattan, which is my base of operations. I mean, it does in the suburbs around the city, but there is no NAR, and it functions just fine.
You guys sell real estate there, don't you? You sell real estate, right?
We do.
And in Manhattan, let me ask you another question. This is really important. I ask you a question. In New York City, do you guys have a company that does the MLS called Perchwell or Perchwell? I mean, I forgot the name of it. Do you have Perchwell there?
Perchwell, I think, is based there, but
do you use Perchwell?
No.
I wonder why.
I wonder why he doesn't use Perchwell.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Sean. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no. They actually, I had a cup of coffee with the founder like 5 years ago, but that's about all I know. I've just not seen it. I know they haven't, to my knowledge, I may be speaking out of turn, but they haven't made any inroads here.
Well, it's interesting you say that, John. It's interesting you say that because I'm using this as a segue. But here's the thing. Okay, so we have the National Association of Realtors, and we have the CEO, and his name is Bob Goldberg, right? He just took the stand last week, and it got heated. I mean, Bob is probably not happy right now. And he also is the director of Second Century Ventures, which is basically a venture capitalist firm that starts companies and then gets the National Association of Realtors to sponsor those companies. Now, there's a lot of companies that are sponsored by Second City Ventures. Perchwell is one of them.
Wow.
So Perchwell is owned by or sponsored by Second City. Now, also there's Regora, which is the appraisal management company.
I've heard of them.
You wonder how that young CEO got all of his money quickly. It's because it's coming in from the National Association of Realtors. So you have Perchwell, and also they sponsored, are you ready for this? They sponsored Big Bird. They sponsored House Canary. Do you remember House Canary?
Yeah.
Do you remember Big Bird? Like that business model flew just as well as Big Bird would fly. I mean, that's how well that thing took off. They have a ton, and they have DocuSign too. They own DocuSign, Regora. But what they're trying to do is, if you go to Second City Ventures, you go down all of these different startups. And what Lori Noble would call hollowed out startups. You go down there, they're trying to basically control all aspects of the real estate transaction from start to finish.
Right,
Perchwell was the only avenue they took on the MLS side, and that's why I think they were pushing it so heavy here in Cincinnati.
I wrote a little bit about the Cincinnati disaster with
currently still taking
MLS.
place. Still taking place. So,
and I just wondered myself how inserting Perchwell into the mix, putting them sort of front and center, is not a conflict of interest. Maybe I need a lawyer to explain it to me. I don't understand how that's okay. And then you make this decision, and then you sort of pause everybody's livelihood while their development can catch up. Like that seems like leadership has forgotten about their members, which is, I think that's the continuing theme of this whole discussion is, at what point do organizations lose sight of their purpose, of their members?
It's an excellent point.
I think that's kind of what, at least the optics give that appearance. And,
case in point, the Cincinnati Area Board of Realtors, I know I gave them a hard time on the last show. They made that call. They made the Perchwell call, and then they took it to a vote. They actually took it to all the members, and they basically said a number one option was to start this hybrid with the Rapatoni system, which went down because of a ransomware attack. So number one, start a hybrid product between Perchwell and Rapatoni, or number two, just go back to Rapatoni. And the vote came in 66%. Go back to Rapatoni. This is ridiculous. Perchwell had its shot. It lost. It the bed on a corporate level, and it's done. And by the way, Rapatoni's up in all of the other marketing areas in the country that they got hit with.
Yeah,
they're back up again. They're working. San Francisco,
one of their big markets. When I think about what this decision process and like that survey, do you want Rapatoni or do you want Perchwell, blah, blah, blah. And Rapatoni won. I kept thinking about that commercial when I was a kid, which was like the most hated commercial on TV. Yeah. It was the mom asking the kids, do you want chicken for dinner or stovetop stuffing? and
everybody wants stovetop.
It's like, do you want chicken or stovetop stuffing? And and like saying the word chicken, it was like said with disdain.
Perchwell's got that. Perchwell, you put Perchwell in Cincinnati, you might as well say the San Francisco 49ers. That's how popular they're going to be here in this town. It's ridiculous. Yeah. And they pushed it, and it's still, here we are, NOV 123 2023, and we still don't have our Rapatoni system back again, Jonathan. They're still holding it off.
So are real estate agents not able to enter listings?
They're entering it through the Perchwell system, but right now, as an appraiser in the city of Cincinnati, guess what MLS I pull first? I pull the Dayton MLS. Now, it's a CoreLogic system up there, but I pull that one first because that's the easiest one that the agents are using and making sure it's automatically going to Zillow so their clients can get the most optimum visibility of their listing.
Right.
This is what I do. I pull Dayton, I pull Perchwell, which then changes overnight, and then I pull MLS, and I pull, believe it or not, I got to go to Zillow, Homes.com, I got to go to Courthouse. I'm doing what you're doing. I'm actually New York appraising. I'm New York appraising.
Welcome to my world because we don't have a traditional MLS in Manhattan.
And you do just fine. And you do just fine. And actually, the sad part, the truth about it is, appraisers do very well when there's chaos because we allow for the clarity of the position of the value. So the more chaos there is, the better we do. What ended up happening there, and I think, honestly, I know that Rapatoni got a virus. I know it got a ransomware, but some people in the transaction, it got a worse virus. It's a virus that happens in corporate America a lot, and it's really bad. And once you get it, it's hard to get over. It's called butthurticus. It's the butthurticus virus, okay? Once you get a butthurticus virus, it is hard to get rid of it because you can't get over the feeling, man. You can't get over the feeling. That means that somebody out there hurt your feelings, don't like it, you didn't make the money you wanted to make, you didn't get the G5 airplane going down to a private resort because you didn't close the deal, so now you got the butthurticus virus. And I think that's honestly what's happened somewhere in the mix. And guess who's hurting for that?
The paying membership isn't getting the service that they pay for. And on top of it, just the optics themselves seems like a massive conflict of interest.
It's terrible. Between that and between Bob Goldberg owning the company that owns Perchwell and all this stuff,
right?
You sit there and you shake your head. I mean, the interest rates had some impact on our values here in Cincinnati, but this is still a hot city. I keep telling you to start covering it. I'm like, Jonathan, this place is freaking hot. This is the best place in the world to live. You don't believe me. Here's the bottom line. They put a wet blanket on one of the hottest real estate markets out there today when this thing went down, and a wet blanket still sits on it today. And that's just a real shame. That's just a real shame.
Yeah, it's impeding commerce is essentially what it's doing.
And that's terrible.
Yeah.
And, you talk about these organizations that are out there, the National Association of Realtors, a lot of people are looking at that buyer's commission as maybe a fee that people don't need to pay. They don't want to pay it. They're considering maybe, quote unquote, a junk fee. Let's segue over, if you wouldn't mind, over to the FTC. Just recently, the FTC put out a press release saying that the FTC proposes a rule that would ban junk fees. This is big on the Biden administration's policy memos this year. They want to ban these, quote unquote, junk fees. The big question I've got is there's a lot of junk fees in the mortgage industry, a lot of junk fees in the travel industry. But the biggest junk fee that's out there today is the hidden appraisal management company fee that people don't see on their HUD disclosure form.
They actually lobbied against that.
Bundling.
Because they didn't want it disclosed.
It was called bundling. It was the lobbying of the bundling. So let me ask you this question. We're talking about copycat lawsuit. Got the National Association of Realtors, got all this stuff going on. What if somebody copycats over, gets a class action lawsuit against the AMC fees? Jonathan, in most cases, these AMC fees are more than what the appraiser is compensated.
The appraisal fee.
How much money's in that? How many billions of dollars are in that trade organization? Tell me what you think.
I always looked at AMC fees. Like, if you're an agent for a movie star in Hollywood and you got 10% of the fee or the gross, like that's. But in our profession, the agent gets 50 to 70% of the fee.
I know.
And that's bizarre.
And the consumer doesn't know they're paying it. The consumer has no idea they're paying it.
They think, wow, the appraisers, they're really expensive. They're getting a lot of money, but they're only getting, like a third of, or, maybe half of that fee for no real reason I can think of.
Well, let me drop another bomb here. We're dropping a lot of bombs today. You want to drop another one real quick? You want to drop a big one here?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so here's one. I think a lot of these AMCs out there, they're overcharging underserved areas. They're overcharging the underserved, especially in the rural areas, because they know that those appraisals are going to cost more in a rural area, so they jack their fee up. I think they're overcharging the underserved communities that this government's trying to help out. That's terrible, in my personal opinion.
I haven't seen the numbers on that, but I know that rural is a huge problem. I just am beside myself on the idea that optimistically I get 50% of what I really should be getting 90 or 100% of the fee. You're getting
50%, but that a consumer doesn't know about. That's the whole key to it. The other 50% is going to an entity that they have no idea. So you recently were on a panel, and by the way, I want to thank you on behalf of all the appraisers throughout the country. You did a phenomenal job on that panel. It was the appraiser subcommittee on appraisal bias. You were on that panel, and you were in front of basically the FHFA, the CFTC, all the big movers and shakers in Washington. You did a terrific job. And I'll tell you something. You answered these questions perfectly, but if you remember, there's a gentleman up there. His name is Rohit Chopra, and he's a big
CFPB.
He's CFPB. He's also and he nailed Michelle Bradley on her conflict of interest between McKissick Education and the Appraisal Foundation. That got really uncomfortable really quick. Did you notice that? I mean, that got heated.
I did. Actually, I found out afterwards that almost everybody on the appraisal subcommittee reads Housing Notes, my Friday newsletter.
Yes.
And, I was honored because Michelle Bradley, the chairman of the Appraisal Standards Boards, actually said my name, because I have written about her extensively with her massive conflict of interest. Her husband, I'm sure he's very nice, is the head of education at McKissick, and McKissick has a contract with the Appraisal Foundation, and her position is to, essentially edit USPAP And when those edits are made, they go right to McKissick and whoever.
Yeah.
And that just seems also like a massive conflict of interest. But she was very incensed. And
well, she got mad about it. But when back in the day, Dick McKissick, when he started that company up, I remember Dick, he's a nice guy. He was teaching USPAP when I first got into the business. And my dad would hire him to come in and teach the appraisers here in Cincinnati. He set that system. Oh. Yeah, so Dick was a great guy. He set that system up. And then I think his son took it over for a little bit there, and then he's gone now. He's out of the picture. But I don't have a problem with working for McKissick or anything like that. But when you hold that position at the Appraisal Foundation, where you're put in a position where you have a direct line to
right, and that's again the Appraisal Foundation, has so many conflicts. On top of that, and I know because I was a member, when I first started getting involved in the foundation before I went rogue. Yeah, I was a member. My appraisal company was a member of the IAC, the Industry Advisory Council.
Right,
and that is where like Zillow, all kinds of companies, sort of get like access to the C-suite at the foundation, and it's sort of pay to play. So all these people pay to have the potential to bend the ear and push agendas, especially AMC's agendas that work against either the quality of the mortgage process or create problems for the appraisers in the field. And they just see it as it's just another part of the grift.
Yeah, but it could be their money grab, Jonathan. But the thing that you got to look at here is obviously Mr. Chopra was not too happy with Michelle Bradley. Okay. Now this is what he said. Now listen to this really quick. And you've been in front of him. And I'm just going to say this right now. He doesn't around. Okay, he's going to come out and he's going to put it out. He's just going to put it out there, right?
He knows your answer before he finishes the question.
Exactly.
Very good.
I have been cross-examined by some really good attorneys that I don't want to be cross-examined by him because he's going to drill you, right?
Yeah,
but this is
very good.
He's very good. This is what he said in this recent article about these junk fees. He said Americans are fed up with the junk fees that are creeping across our economy, said CFPB Director Rohit Chopra. The FTC's proposed rule will protect families and honest businesses from race-to-the-bottom abuses that cost us billions of dollars each year. If finalized, the CFPB will enforce the rule against violators in the financial industry and ensure that these firms play fairly. He's on it. And do you remember?
Yeah, no, he's totally on it. Kind of the way that I describe the situation with appraisers is that after the financial crisis, everybody pivoted to AMCs, and AMCs took 50 to 75% of
their junk fees now, the possible junk fees. Yeah.
And then now we're expected at half the revenue pre-2009 to like bring on trainees and train young people to enter the profession. And it's like, that's not happening anymore.
No.
And that's the reason, like, we've been weakened financially as an industry. So it's very difficult to have an appraisal business beyond, having one or two people in your company.
But remember, junk fees are considered to be parasitical fees. They parasite off the host. And if it gets out there, if Mr. Chopra is going to go in the direction I think he's going to go, and you got the copycat situation going on with the National Association of Realtors, I think that people are going to start looking at these appraisal management companies saying, are these junk fees, are they parasiting not only from the consumers, but they're also parasiting from the appraisal profession as a whole. Everything that we talked about at Appraiser Fest 2018, the way Jonathan has positioned his company, the way that I position my company, the way that Ryan Lindquist positions his company, you got to get away from some of this mortgage lending work and get into other avenues because this is not where you need to be on a residential side.
You think about the probability of a future.
Yes.
To me, I rationalize it as death. Like you need to, you need to think about more than ever diversification beyond. I know that's easier said than done, but this doesn't feel like it's going to end well. And I think it's important for people to not live and die by mortgage appraisals.
You once told me something very, very smart. This is back when I started my appraisal podcast. I had heard about you. I didn't know who you were. I mean, I knew who you were, but I never talked to you. And you decided to come on the show. And I was doing great. Kevin and I were making about $40,000 a year on advertising on the show. It was going great. And I had you on, and you trashed the Appraisal Institute, and I lost all my clients the next day. Okay, all the sponsors like, screw this. Okay, the hell with you, Phil. And you know what? Yeah. I lost $40,000, but I gained a friend, and I gained a true friend. I'm not going to lie to you. You are worth every.
I feel like I'm worth more than $40,000.
I know. Well, I still lost the money. I still lost the money. Okay.
I know. I mean, not many people can say that they went on a podcast and caused the host to lose $40,000 in advertising money. I feel special.
Yeah, no. But my point is this. You always said this to me because I was asking about the podcast, and because you had the first podcast. You had the Housing Helix.
The Housing Helix, which I think I'm going to bring back.
That was before me. That was pre-VOA. Yeah. And I came on after that. And you always said to me, the one thing that you'll never be able to scale in business is talent and personality. And if you look at what is going on, and I'm going to give everybody out there the $1 billion move forward. Okay, this is as they would say, the great leap forward, not to use a Mal term. This is where you need to go. The National Association of Realtors are in trouble. The buyer's representation is in trouble. I don't care what happens here. I don't care if the NAR wins or loses. The money that's paid to the buyer's agent is going to be an issue going forward. And if that buyer is not represented, but is represented only by the seller's agent, this is an opportunity for you as an appraiser to come in as the third party, the unbiased, the disinterested person, to work with different attorneys that may represent that individual on a fiduciary level with the attorney, and then you're offering that service as the appraiser. That really, honestly, is going to be a good product moving forward. It's one I'm working on myself personally, Jonathan. Buyer's representation in a third-party unbiased position, that's your way forward in the appraisal profession, and that is going to require, number one, your talent, your databases, your knowledge, and, of course, your personality. So here's the bottom line. We got a lot of things going on in the appraisal industry. Number one, we need leadership. Enough of this bullshit. Number two, it can't be as hostile as it is right now because you're not going to get Generation Z or the millennials anywhere near this profession if we can't get this hostility out of it. A lot of people that have been in this business for a long time, a lot of the leadership that's been out there, they remind me of those creatures at the beginning of the Dark Crystal. They're just sucking. They're sucking all the energy out of this thing. And they need to, I'm sorry, but it's time's up. Okay, time's up. Time to retire because otherwise it's going to go nowhere. It's going to go nowhere. All right, buddy. Listen, I always appreciate you coming on the show. Can you believe 5 years from NOV 123? A lot's changed, but I swear to you, everything we talked about at Appraiser Fest, it's right here, right now. We had Ross Kay on talking about working directly with the consumer, Ryan Lindquist, yourself. We talked about blockchain. Bitcoin just went to 35,000 last week. Come on. I mean, you can't beat that. I mean, we were on target at that time, but I do value your friendship very much. You did cost me $40,000 that first year out, but I love you anyways. That's all right.
Yeah, but I'm worth it.
You are totally worth it. I'll tell you that right now. And be safe, and I wish you the very best. And come back on again sometime, okay?
Anytime, Phil. Really a pleasure.
So, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of our show. And as always, I would like to thank you for listening as we journey through the mysteries and complexities that are, in fact, the real estate appraisal profession. I would like to thank our guests, Jonathan Miller, and my producer, Kevin Kinney, for being here for the thoughtful insight and knowledge. God willing, we're going to be back here very soon, continuing to report from the front lines of the real estate market. In the meantime, you kiss your spouse, you hug your children, enjoy your day, be safe in the field. You've been listening to Phil Crawford on Voice of Appraisal. We will talk very soon.
I said we'd cut up your junk.
No, Kevin, that's just not a good thing. Professional vasectomies, they must come to an end at Fannie Mae.
Cut up your junk.
Stop the professional vasectomies, Fannie.
I said we'd cut up your junk.